Welcome to War Bios, the podcast where we delve into the most pivotal battles in history, and I'm your host, General Biography. Today, we're going to explore one of the most significant naval engagements of the American Civil War, the Battle of Hampton Roads. This clash of ironclads marked a turning point in maritime warfare and had far-reaching consequences for the conflict. The early months of 1862 were a tumultuous time for the Union Navy, which was struggling to maintain control of the Atlantic coast. The Confederacy had already made several attempts to break the Union blockade, including the infamous raid by the CSS Sumter, which had captured several Union ships in the summer of 1861. The Union Navy, under the command of Admiral Samuel DuPont, was determined to maintain its grip on the Atlantic coast and prevent the Confederacy from gaining a strategic advantage. In the winter of 1862, the Confederate Navy was busy constructing its own ironclad warship, the CSS Virginia, at the Gosport shipyard in Portsmouth, Virginia. The ship's designer, Lieutenant John Mercer Brooke, had envisioned a formidable vessel with a combination of iron plating and powerful guns that could challenge the Union blockade. Meanwhile, the U.S. Congress had authorized the construction of 3 ironclad warships, including the USS Monitor, which would eventually face off against the CSS Virginia at Hampton Roads. The USS Monitor's designer, Swedish-American engineer John Ericsson, had proposed a radical new design that featured a rotating turret and a shallow draft, allowing the ship to operate in coastal waters. The Monitor was being built at the Continental Iron Works in Brooklyn, New York, under the watchful eye of Ericsson himself. As the winter of 1862 wore on, both ships were nearing completion, setting the stage for a showdown between the Union and Confederate navies. The historical context of the Battle of Hampton Roads was marked by the escalating tensions between the Union and Confederate navies. The Confederacy had already made several attempts to break the Union blockade, including the raid by the CSS Sumter, which had captured several Union ships in the summer of 1861. The Union Navy, under the command of Admiral DuPont, was determined to maintain its grip on the Atlantic coast and prevent the Confederacy from gaining a strategic advantage. In February 1862, the CSS Virginia was launched into the Elizabeth River, where it underwent a series of sea trials. The ship's commanding officer, Captain Franklin Buchanan, was eager to test the vessel's mettle against the Union Navy. Meanwhile, the USS Monitor was still under construction in Brooklyn, but its designer, John Ericsson, was confident that his ship would be able to take on the CSS Virginia and emerge victorious. As the stage was set for a showdown between the two ironclads, the Union Navy was busy preparing its defenses at Hampton Roads. The Union fleet, under the command of Admiral Lewis Goldsborough, had anchored in the roads, ready to face off against the Confederate Navy. The fate of the Union Navy and the outcome of the war hung in the balance, as these two titans of the sea prepared to clash in a maelstrom of steel and fire. The outcome would be far from certain, as these two warships navigated the treacherous waters of Hampton Roads, exchanging blows and vying for control of the seas. On March 8, 1862, the CSS Virginia, under the command of Captain Franklin Buchanan, steamed out of the Elizabeth River and into the waters of Hampton Roads, ready to take on the Union Navy. The Confederate ironclad was a formidable vessel, with a combination of iron plating and powerful guns that made it nearly invulnerable to attack. As the CSS Virginia entered the roads, it was met by a fleet of Union ships, including the USS Cumberland, the USS Congress, and the USS Minnesota. The Union vessels were no match for the Confederate ironclad, however, and they were quickly dispatched by the Virginia's guns. The CSS Virginia then turned its attention to the USS Monitor, which had arrived on the scene just in time to witness the devastation wrought by the Confederate ironclad. The USS Monitor, under the command of Lieutenant John Worden, was a radical new design that featured a rotating turret and a shallow draft, allowing it to operate in coastal waters. Despite its smaller size and lighter armament compared to the CSS Virginia, the Monitor proved to be a formidable opponent, thanks to its innovative design and the bravery of its crew. As the two ironclads faced off against each other, they engaged in a fierce duel that would last for several hours. The CSS Virginia fired broadside after broadside at the USS Monitor, but the Union ship's rotating turret allowed it to return fire with ease, striking the Confederate vessel with several direct hits. Despite being outgunned, the USS Monitor held its own against the CSS Virginia, thanks to its agility and maneuverability. The battle between the two ironclads was a testament to the bravery and skill of the sailors who crewed them. As the fight raged on, both ships suffered damage, but neither could gain a decisive advantage. Finally, after several hours of combat, the CSS Virginia withdrew from the battle, its crew exhausted and its ship badly damaged. The USS Monitor had emerged victorious, having successfully defended the Union fleet against the Confederate ironclad. The battle was a turning point in the war, as it marked the beginning of a new era in naval warfare. The use of ironclads had proven to be a game changer, and both the Union and Confederate navies would go on to develop more advanced ironclad designs in the years that followed. The battle was a testament to the power of innovation and determination, as both sides pushed the boundaries of what was thought possible in naval warfare. The Battle of Hampton Roads was a strategic victory for the Union, as it prevented the Confederate ironclad from breaking the Union blockade of southern ports. The USS Monitor's successful defense of the Union fleet marked a significant shift in the balance of power at sea, as it demonstrated the effectiveness of ironclad warships in naval combat. In the months and years that followed, both the Union and Confederate navies continued to develop and improve their ironclad designs. The Union Navy built a series of monitors, including the USS Passaic and the USS Montauk, which played key roles in several battles throughout the war. The Confederacy, meanwhile, constructed several ironclads, including the CSS Tennessee and the CSS Atlanta, but these ships were ultimately unable to match the strength and numbers of the Union Navy. The CSS Virginia, also known as the Merrimack, was eventually scuttled by its crew in May 1862 as Union forces closed in on the Confederate naval base at Norfolk. The USS Monitor, meanwhile, continued to serve with distinction throughout the war, playing a key role in the Union victory at the Battle of Charleston Harbor in 1863. Tragically, the Monitor sank in a storm off the coast of North Carolina in December 1862, resulting in the loss of 16 lives. The legacy of the USS Monitor and the CSS Virginia can still be seen today, as these two ships paved the way for the development of modern naval warfare. The use of ironclads during the American Civil War marked a significant turning point in the history of naval technology, as it led to the widespread adoption of armored warships and the eventual development of battleships, cruisers, and other types of modern warships. In addition to their military significance, the USS Monitor and the CSS Virginia have also become cultural icons, symbolizing the ingenuity and determination of the sailors who fought in the American Civil War. The wreck of the USS Monitor was discovered in 1973, and several artifacts from the ship are now on display at the Mariners Museum in Newport News, Virginia. The CSS Virginia, meanwhile, is commemorated by a museum ship in Norfolk, Virginia, which showcases the history and significance of this pioneering ironclad. The bravery and ingenuity of the sailors who fought in this battle, combined with the innovative designs of the USS Monitor and the CSS Virginia, helped to shape the future of naval warfare and pave the way for the development of modern warships. That's all for today's War Bios. Remember to like, share, and subscribe. And until next time, I'm General Biography reminding you to keep marching toward victory.